My son and ex-wife left me at the airport as a joke. Let's see how he finds his way home. And went on our family vacation without me, laughing. I never returned to them. Years later, they found out about my wealth and claimed their share of it as if nothing had happened. A few days later, I received 29 missed calls, and then I realized my revenge was just beginning. It will make them answer for their actions and impudence. You won't believe what I did. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you are listening in the comments. The phone shattered the silence of my study, like glass hitting marble. I glanced up from the quarterly investment report scattered across my mahogany desk, the numbers blurring slightly in the warm lamplight. At 79, my eyes weren't what they used to be, but my mind remained sharp as ever. I reached for the phone, expecting Henderson from the real estate firm or perhaps Margaret calling about tomorrow's charity board meeting. Daniel Collins. "Dad, I need money. Now." The voice hit me like a physical blow. 20 years of silence, and this was how it ended. Not with an apology, not with explanation, but with a demand. Eric's voice had aged, roughened around the edges, but carried that same entitled tone I remembered from his teenage years. My financial report slipped from my lap, pages floating to the Persian rug below. "Eric," my voice came out smaller than intended. "After 20 years, this is how you—" "Cut the sentiment, old man. I need $350,000 by next Friday." The words felt like ice water in my veins. Need, not want, not would appreciate, but need. As if my money was already his, waiting for collection. "You need?" I stood slowly, my legs unsteady. Not want, not would appreciate, but need. "Look, I don't have time for your wounded feelings. I've found out about your little real estate empire. 12 million? Not bad for someone who used to fix toilets." Isbel, my hand tightened on the phone. He'd been watching me, researching me, calculating my worth like I was livestock at auction. "People I owe money to don't wait for family reunions," Eric continued, his voice growing sharper. "They break things. Important things. So, here's how this works. You transfer the money, I disappear again, everyone stays healthy." The memory hit me like a sledgehammer. Los Angeles International Airport, 2005. My suitcase heavy in my hand, boarding pass clutched in the other. Eric and Molly walking away, their laughter echoing through the terminal. "Let's see how he finds his way home." That laugh, cold, dismissive, final. "Dad, you still there?" I was there, but not the same man who'd stood abandoned in that airport 20 years ago. Not the broke handyman who'd worked 3 jobs to pay for Eric's college. Not the fool who'd believed family meant something. I'm here. Good. So, we understand each other? We understand each other perfectly. My voice had found its steel. The answer is no. Silence stretched between us like a taut wire. "What did you just say?" "No." Simple word. 2 letters. Surely your expensive education covered basic vocabulary. "You think this is a joke?" Eric's voice cracked with panic. "These people will what? Come after a broke old man? I'm afraid you've miscalculated, son." "Miscalculated? I know exactly what you're worth." "Do you? Because the man you left in that airport had nothing. Nothing but a suitcase and a lesson he'll never forget. That was different. We were young. We made mistakes. You made choices, and so am I." The line went dead. I stood there in my study, surrounded by the evidence of everything I'd built without them. The harbor lights twinkled through my floor-to-ceiling windows, each one a reminder of how far I'd climbed from that abandoned man in the airport. My untouched scotch sat on the side table, amber liquid catching the lamplight. I'd poured it an hour ago, planning to celebrate another successful quarter. Now it seemed like preparation for war. The clock on my desk ticked steadily. 4 p.m. In 10 minutes, my entire world had shifted. I walked to the window, pressing my palm against the cool glass. 20 years, I'd wondered if they'd ever reach out. 20 years, I'd imagined what I might say, how I might forgive. But forgiveness required remorse, and Eric had offered none. Only demands, only threats, only the assumption that blood trumped betrayal. I picked up the scattered financial reports, my hands steady now. $12 million. Eric had done his homework, but not well enough. He'd found the real estate holdings, the investment portfolio, even the charity donations. but he'd missed the most important detail. I wasn't the same man anymore. Eric's voice echoed in the silence, but it wasn't his voice anymore. It was younger, crueler, laughing somewhere behind me in the chaos of Los Angeles International Airport. June 8th, 2005, Terminal 3. The memory hit me like stepping through a doorway into hell. I was 49 again, standing at gate 27 with 3 boarding passes clutched in my sweaty palm. The vacation I'd spent months planning, the $8,000 I'd scraped together from overtime shifts and borrowed against our mortgage. "Daniel, sweetie, could you get us coffee?" Molly's voice had that particular tone she used when she wanted something. The good kind from that fancy shop down the terminal. "Eric and I will watch the bags." I'd practically bounced to my feet. After months of cold shoulders and tense dinners, she was asking me for something. Using endearments. Maybe this trip would fix us after all. "Of course, regular for you, double shot for Eric." "Whatever's expensive," she'd said, not looking up from her magazine. The coffee shop sat 200 yards away, past security checkpoints and moving walkways. I'd carried that cardboard tray like it held liquid gold, dodging tourists and crying children, the hot cups burning my palms through thin holders. When I returned, our gate was empty. Not just our seats, the entire waiting area had cleared for the next flight. Our luggage was gone, Molly's magazine abandoned on the floor, pages scattered by rushing feet. "Excuse me, sir?" The gate agent, a tired woman with kind eyes, held a folded paper. "Your family asked me to give you this." My hands shook as I opened it. Molly's precise handwriting, each letter a tiny knife. "This isn't working. Don't follow us." That's when I heard it. Eric's laughter carrying over the departure announcements, somewhere near the boarding bridge, young and breathless with excitement. "Let's see how he finds his way home." The words cut through terminal noise like broken glass. I stood there holding 3 cups of coffee that cost $47, watching other families board their flights. A toddler pointed at me from her father's arms. An elderly couple whispered behind their hands. 20 years of marriage, gone with a note. The security guard approached because I'd been standing there too long, looking suspicious with my abandoned coffee and confused expression. I had to explain about the luggage, the tickets that were in Molly's name, the hotel reservation I couldn't access. "Sir, you'll need to contact the airline about changing your ticket." But there was no ticket to change. They'd booked everything. I had nothing but a carry-on bag and the clothes on my back. The journey home took 14 hours, 2 buses, a train, and finally a taxi that cost more than I had in my wallet. The driver waited while I stumbled into our empty house, searching for cash in kitchen drawers. Every room echoed with their absence, closets half empty. Eric's graduation photos gone from the mantle. 20 years of shared life reduced to missing spaces. But that night, sitting in my dark kitchen with divorce papers already waiting on the counter, something crystallized in the silence. They thought they'd destroyed me. They were wrong. March 15th, 2025. My study. The memory faded like smoke, leaving me standing by my floor-to-ceiling windows with their view of San Diego Harbor. My reflection stared back, older now, wearing a $1,000 shirt in a house worth $3 million. The abandoned man from LAX was gone. In his place stood someone they'd never bothered to know, someone with 12 million reasons to remember exactly what betrayal felt like. My phone lay silent on the desk, Eric's threat still echoing in the mahogany-paneled room. 10 days, he'd said. 10 days or his dangerous friends would come calling. I picked up my scotch, finally taking that first sip. The amber liquid burned, but not as much as the memory. They'd taught me the most valuable lesson of my life in that airport terminal. Family was earned, not inherited. And respect? Respect had a price they were about to learn. My palm pressed against the mahogany surface of my desk, feeling the smooth grain beneath expensive polish. This desk alone cost more than I'd made in an entire year back then. But that broken man stumbling home from LAX, he'd learned something precious in that terminal. He'd learned that depending on others was a luxury he couldn't afford. August 2005, a studio apartment in East LA that smelled like mildew and broken dreams, $600 a month, paid with the last of my divorce settlement. The refrigerator held expired milk and determination. Nothing else? I'd stare at classified ads until my eyes burned, circling job listings with a dying pen, handyman, maintenance worker, security guard, anything that didn't require references from a wife who'd abandoned me. But late at night, when sirens wailed through thin walls, I studied something else. Real estate listings. Properties nobody wanted in neighborhoods everyone avoided. That duplex in Chula Vista changed everything. The listing had been up for months. $85,000 for a structure that looked like it had survived warfare. Graffiti-covered walls, broken windows, tenants who'd disappeared, owing 3 months' rent. Everyone saw problems. I saw potential. $15,000 down. My last $15,000? The bank officer looked at me like I was insane. A 49-year-old divorced man with no job betting everything on a disaster. Sir, this property has significant challenges. I've been challenged before, I'd told him. 3 months of 18-hour days. Patching drywall, replacing fixtures, learning plumbing from YouTube videos. My hands bled from rough work, but each repair felt like building something they couldn't take away. The first tenant paid rent in cash. Maria, a single mother who worked double shifts at the hospital. She looked at the fresh paint and functioning heater like I'd handed her a palace. "Thank you for giving us a chance," she whispered. Nobody had ever thanked them before. By 2007, I owned 3 properties, small buildings, nothing fancy, but each one generated income while I slept. Income they couldn't steal with a boarding pass and a cruel laugh. The 2008 recession hit like a sledgehammer. Property values plummeted, banks tightened credit. Other investors panicked, selling at losses. I bought everything I could, distressed properties at 50 cents on the dollar. Foreclosures from families who'd overextended. I felt sorry for them, but sentiment doesn't pay mortgages. By 2010, my portfolio included 8 residential units, generating $43,000 annually. Not wealthy, but stable, independent. Then Henderson approached me about the downtown project. "Collins, you understand troubled properties. This commercial development, it's bleeding money. Previous investors pulled out, but if someone could see past the problems, $2.5 million, more than I'd ever risked, requiring me to leverage everything I'd built." The project sat half-finished in downtown San Diego, concrete bones reaching toward empty sky, city permits tangled in red tape. Construction crews long gone. Everyone saw an expensive mistake. I saw downtown revitalization before it happened. 18 months of negotiations, permit battles, and construction nightmares. I slept in the site trailer more nights than in my apartment. Every morning brought new problems. Cost overruns, permit delays, contractors who disappeared with advance payments. But every evening, I'd stand on the unfinished roof and watch the harbor lights twinkle in the distance. The same view I'd have from this study years later. When we sold the developed complex in 2015, my share was $6.2 million. That night, I bought this house. Cash. Now, I run my fingers along financial reports showing properties across 3 counties. Monthly rental income, $67,000. Investment portfolio, $4.8 million. Real estate equity, $7.2 million. Total net worth, $12,300,000. Not bad for someone who used to fix toilets. The intercom on my desk blinks with an incoming call from my property manager. Even at 8 p.m., the business never sleeps. But tonight, I let it ring. Tonight, I'm remembering exactly how it felt to build everything from nothing, and how it feels when someone thinks they can just demand it away. My phone lies silent beside the reports, Eric's threats still echoing in the room's mahogany-paneled quiet. 10 days, he'd said. 10 days before his dangerous friends came calling. He had no idea who he was threatening. The abandoned man from the airport was gone. In his place sat someone who'd turned humiliation into empire, who'd transformed betrayal into unshakable strength. Someone who was about to remind a spoiled son exactly what consequences looked like. The quiet lasted exactly 12 minutes. I'd just finished organizing my financial reports, savoring the satisfaction of reviewing my transformation, when my phone buzzed with an unknown number, San Diego area code, but not one I recognized. I let it ring. 2 minutes later, it rang again. Same number, then again. By the fifth call in 20 minutes, I silenced the phone and moved to my bedroom. Whoever was calling could leave a message if it mattered, but they didn't stop. Throughout the evening, my phone lit up like a Christmas tree, silent flashes in the darkness, each one another attempted invasion of my peace. I'd built this life precisely to avoid such interruptions. By midnight, curiosity finally won. I checked the call log. 18 missed calls, all from the same number, one voicemail. I pressed play, and 20 years collapsed into nothing. "Daniel, darling, it's Molly." Her voice had aged, roughened by cigarettes and disappointment, but still carried that syrupy tone she used when she wanted something. "Eric told me about your little conversation earlier. I think there's been a misunderstanding." My hand tightened on the phone. "We need to talk about this situation like adults. Family shouldn't treat family this way, don't you think? Call me back when you get this." Family. The word tasted like poison. I deleted the message and went back to bed, but she kept calling. Dostan. AM. Message 2. "Daniel, I know you're getting these. This is important. Eric made a mistake, yes, but he's still your son. Your only son. Surely that means something to you." 3:45. AM. Message 7. "You can't just ignore us forever. I know what kind of man you are, deep down. The Daniel I married would never abandon his family when they needed help most. The Daniel she married, the fool who'd believed her lies." 22. AM. Message 12. "This is ridiculous, Daniel. You have millions of dollars sitting in banks while your son faces serious consequences. What kind of father does that make you?" Her voice was getting hoarse now, desperation creeping through the practiced manipulation. 18. AM. Message 18. "Fine, be stubborn. But remember, Eric didn't choose to have gambling problems. These things run in families. Maybe if his father had been around more, shown him better examples, blaming me for Eric's choices. Even now." 03. AM. Message 23. "You think you're so superior now with your fancy house and your money? You forget. I know where you came from. I know what you really are underneath all that wealth." The mask was slipping. 45. AM. Final message. "Please, Daniel, I'm asking you. No, I'm begging you. Help him. Help us. Whatever happened between us, Eric shouldn't have to pay for it. He's scared, Daniel. Really scared, and I don't know what else to do." For the first time in hours, she sounded genuinely frightened. I sat up in bed as dawn light filtered through my bedroom windows. 29 missed calls, 24 voicemails. 10 hours of relentless harassment from a woman who'd walked away from me in an airport terminal 20 years ago. Now she was begging. The irony would have been funny if it weren't so pathetic. I scrolled through the messages again, listening to her voice deteriorate from false sweetness to raw desperation. The same woman who'd orchestrated my abandonment, who'd laughed at my humiliation, who'd stolen 20 years of my life with her son. She'd called me every possible name. Selfish, cruel, heartless, unnatural. She'd tried guilt, manipulation, threats, and finally pleading. The full arsenal of emotional warfare she'd always used, but she'd forgotten something crucial. I wasn't that broken man from the airport anymore. I'd learned her tactics, understood her games, and built defenses she couldn't penetrate. More importantly, I'd learned patience. I reached for the legal pad on my nightstand, the one I used for business planning. But this morning, I had a different kind of business to attend to. At the top of the page, I wrote 2 names. Eric Collins, Molly Collins. Below that, current assets, debts, dependencies, vulnerabilities. They'd spent 20 years assuming I'd remain the same fool they'd abandoned. Time to show them exactly how wrong they were. I set the phone down and walked to my office, leaving Molly's desperate voice behind in the bedroom. My computer hummed to life while I made coffee, the familiar routine grounding me in the present moment. 29 calls, 10 hours of harassment, and now they expected what? Gratitude for the wake-up call? I opened my laptop and pulled up a fresh document. At the top, I typed, Collins Family Assessment, March 16, 2025. Below that, 2 columns, assets and liabilities. Time to conduct some due diligence. Eric's digital footprint proved surprisingly sparse. His LinkedIn showed no activity in 18 months, the last entry a vague, seeking new opportunities post that reeked of desperation. His Facebook profile, locked down tight, offered only a profile picture from 2019 and a handful of public check-ins at various bars and restaurants. But public records told a different story. 3 address changes in 2 years. The most recent, 892 Elm Drive, a rundown complex in East County where rent ran $800 a month. Before that, Pine Street, then Oak Avenue. Always moving, always running. Court records revealed more. Eric Collins, defendant in 3 small claims cases totaling $47,000. Unpaid debts, broken lease agreements, defaulted personal loans. The pattern painted itself clearly, a man spiraling downward, burning bridges faster than he could build them. I cross-referenced his current address against property records. The building, owned by Riverside Management Company, showed multiple units with frequent tenant turnover. Reviews online complained of broken air conditioning, pest problems, and an indifferent landlord. My son, the one who'd laughed at my abandonment 20 years ago, now lived in the kind of place I'd escaped in 2005. Molly's trail led to Garden Vista Apartments, Unit 3B. $950 monthly rent in a complex that advertised senior-friendly living and affordable comfort. The photos showed vinyl siding and chain-link fences, a far cry from the suburban dream she'd once shared with me. Her social media activity told the real story. Complaints about rising Medicare costs, grocery prices, utility bills, posts asking friends for recommendations on budget-friendly everything, doctors, mechanics, restaurants. The woman who'd once spent $200 on a single dinner now clipped digital coupons and shared articles about Social Security benefit increases. Divorce records revealed her subsequent marriages. Robert Hall, 2008-2012. James Morrison, 2015-2018. Both endings attributed to irreconcilable differences, but the property settlements showed a pattern of diminishing returns. Whatever assets she'd gained from our divorce had been steadily depleted through failed relationships and poor financial decisions. By 9:30, I had assembled a comprehensive picture. Eric, unemployed, debt-ridden, facing eviction based on late rent notices filed in public records. Vehicle registration showed a 2018 Honda Civic with 187,000 miles. Transportation born of necessity, not choice. Molly. Fixed income, modest apartment, no assets beyond basic household items. Her most recent tax lien, filed in 2023, showed she owed the state $4,000 in back payments. They weren't just desperate, they were drowning. And here I sat, in a house worth $3 million, reviewing investment portfolios that generated more monthly income than either of them saw in a year. The irony was almost artistic. I leaned back in my chair, studying the spreadsheet I'd created. Their combined monthly income, Eric's unemployment benefits plus Molly's Social Security, totaled less than what I paid my housekeeper. The same people who'd abandoned me at an airport, who'd walked away laughing while I held 3 boarding passes to nowhere, now lived paycheck to paycheck in the America they'd assumed I'd never escape. But they'd made one crucial miscalculation. They'd contacted me. 20 years of silence, broken by a desperate phone call and a night of harassment. They'd shown me their hand. Complete financial vulnerability, coupled with the same entitled arrogance that had defined our relationship decades ago. In business, I'd learned to recognize opportunity disguised as crisis. This situation presented both. I opened a new browser tab and typed, Debt Collection Agency San Diego. If Eric owed $350,000 to dangerous people, those people had names, and businesses, and business records. Everything was traceable if you knew where to look. My coffee had grown cold while I worked, but my purpose had crystallized with laser focus. They wanted money, they'd get exactly what they deserved. I reached for my phone, scrolling through contacts until I found Henderson's number. If anyone knew how to acquire distressed debt at a discount, it would be my business partner, Time to turn their desperation into my advantage. Henderson's number rang twice before his familiar voice answered. "Daniel, what can I do for you this morning?" "Richard, I need some discreet legal work. Debt acquisition? Can your team handle something like that?" A pause. "That's unusual for you. Real estate related?" "Personal matter. I want to purchase some distressed consumer debt. Completely legitimate. All proper documentation." "Of course. How much are we talking about?" $350,000 face value. I'll pay fair market rate." Another pause, longer this time. "Daniel, that's going to run you maybe $85,000, assuming standard collection agency rates. Are you sure about this?" $85,000, less than what I'd paid for my kitchen renovation last year. "I'm sure. How quickly can you move on this?" "Give me the debtor information. If the paperwork's clean, we can have everything transferred within 72 hours. I gave him Eric's full name, address, and social security number, information I'd gathered from public records during my research. Richard's team was efficient. By Thursday afternoon, they had identified 7 different creditors holding pieces of Eric's gambling debts. The largest was Riverside Recovery Services, a legitimate collection agency that had purchased Eric's casino. Markers at a discount, they were happy to sell for 22 cents on the dollar. Professional courtesy between businesses. Pacific Credit Solutions held another chunk, unpaid personal loans. Eric had defaulted on 6 months ago. They accepted 18 cents per dollar owed. By Friday morning, Richard called with updates. "We've acquired approximately 92% of the outstanding debt. Total investment, $87,200. The remaining creditors either weren't interested in selling or couldn't be reached." "That's fine. What's our legal position?" "You now hold collection rights for $323,000 in legitimately transferred debt. We've prepared all documentation through subsidiary companies, so your name won't appear directly on any paperwork." "Perfect. Anonymous, but legal. When does Eric get notified?" "Certified letters go out this afternoon. Legal requirement is 48 hours advance notice before we can begin collection activities." I checked my calendar. March 19th, 2 o'clock p.m. Eric would receive his surprise on a Wednesday afternoon. Just as his original deadline pressure was mounting, "Richard, make sure the notification emphasizes the accelerated payment schedule. Full amount, due within 72 hours of notice." "That's aggressive, Daniel. Most collection agencies offer payment plans." "We're not most collection agencies." Friday evening, I sat in my study reviewing the final paperwork. Clean, professional, legally bulletproof. Eric Collins now owed Meridian Asset Recovery LLC, my shell company, $323,000 with full payment demanded by Saturday afternoon. The irony tasted sweet. The same man who demanded money from me 5 days ago would now face consequences he'd never imagined. Saturday passed quietly. Sunday morning brought light rain against my office windows as I waited. At exactly 2:15 Wednesday afternoon, my secure business line rang. "Mr. Collins, this is Patricia Wong from Meridian Asset Recovery. We've just completed notification to the debtor. Certified mail was signed for at 2:03 p.m. Any immediate response?" "The usual: shock, denial, claims of impossibility." He asked who owned our company, but we're not required to disclose that information. I imagined Eric standing in his shabby apartment, holding legal documents that transformed his world in 17 minutes, the same apartment I'd discovered through my research, $800 monthly rent in a complex that smelled like failure and broken dreams. "Keep me informed of any contact attempts." "Of course, sir." The next hour crawled. Eric would be reading the documents now, understanding that his $350,000 problem had become a $323,000 emergency with a Saturday deadline. He'd calculate dates, realize he had exactly 71 hours to produce more money than he'd ever possessed. He'd panic. At 3:47, Patricia called again. "Mr. Collins, the debtor just contacted our office. He's quite distressed, asking about payment plans, extensions, verification of debt ownership." "What did you tell him?" "Standard procedures. Full documentation is available for review. Payment plans aren't currently offered. And he has 71 hours to remit full payment or face additional collection actions." "Excellent. The same voice that had laughed at my airport abandonment 20 years ago was now pleading with collection agents about money he couldn't possibly raise. But this was just the beginning. My phone was ringing before I'd even set the legal documents down. "Mom, something's happened. Something bad." Molly's voice crackled through my phone speaker, tired and irritated. "Eric, what now? I haven't slept in 2 days because of your... They sold my debt, all of it, to some company called Meridian Asset Recovery." Silence. "What do you mean, sold?" My hands shook as I read from the official letterhead. $323,000. Due in full by Saturday afternoon, or they initiate seizure proceedings. That's impossible. Debt doesn't just transfer like that. "It's all here, Mom. Legal documents, signatures. They bought everything from the collection agencies." Another pause. Longer this time. "Eric, this is Wednesday. Saturday is 3 days away." "I know." My voice cracked. "I know that." At exactly 4 o'clock, my phone rang. Unknown number, professional tone. "Mr. Collins, this is Jennifer Martinez from Meridian Asset Recovery. We need to discuss your payment arrangements." I need more time. This just happened today." "Our records show you've been aware of these obligations for several months. The transfer notice simply changes the creditor, not your responsibility." "But 3 days? That's impossible." "We understand this creates pressure, Mr. Collins. However, our company has specific policies regarding payment timelines. Can you propose a realistic settlement amount?" I calculated frantically. My unemployment benefits were $800 a month. My savings account held $47. I don't have anything close to that amount. Then we'll need to discuss asset evaluation and garnishment procedures. Our next contact will be at 8 p.m. this evening. The line went dead. By 6 o'clock, I'd called Molly 4 times. Each conversation the same desperate loop. No money, no options, no idea who was behind this. "Eric, calm down. Let me think." "There's nothing to think about. I owe more money than I'll make in 5 years. Someone bought this debt specifically. That costs money. Why would they do that unless what? Unless they wanted control over you." The 8 p.m. call came exactly on schedule. Same professional tone, different name. "Mr. Collins, this is David Hall from Meridian's legal department. We've reviewed your case and need to inform you of potential consequences." My apartment felt smaller with each word. Asset seizure, credit destruction, garnishment of future income, legal proceedings beginning Monday if payment wasn't received. Thursday morning brought a certified letter. Same message, official language, countdown timer, now showing 51 hours. Thursday afternoon, another call. Different voice, same company. "Mr. Collins, we've attempted to reach you multiple times. Our client is prepared to consider a settlement, but time is critical." Who's your client? That information isn't required for debt collection purposes. But someone has to own this debt, right? Someone made the decision to buy it? Our company manages these accounts professionally, Mr. Collins. The ownership structure isn't relevant to your payment obligations. 43 hours remaining. Thursday evening, Molly called me. "I've been researching this Meridian company. And they exist. Business license filed 3 weeks ago. Address is a law office in downtown San Diego. So, Eric, 3 weeks ago was right after you called your father." My blood went cold. That's coincidence. "Is it? You call Daniel asking for money. He refuses. 3 days later, some mysterious company acquires all your debt and demands payment in 72 hours. I sat down heavily on my couch, the one piece of furniture the previous tenants had left behind. "You think Dad is behind this?" "I think someone with a lot of money and a grudge just bought your debt for pennies on the dollar, and I think we both know who has money and reasons to want you desperate." The room spun slightly. "But that's cruel." "Eric, honey, we left him stranded at an airport 20 years ago. If Daniel's behind this, cruel doesn't begin to describe what he's planning." My phone buzzed with a text message. Unknown number. Final notice. 31 hours remaining. Next contact will include asset evaluation team. I showed Molly the message when she arrived an hour later. She studied it with the same expression she'd worn during her divorce proceedings. Calculating, suspicious, ready for war. "Someone is doing this to us deliberately," she said finally. And if it's Daniel, he's about to learn that we don't give up without a fight. I grabbed my phone before Molly had finished speaking. We need to meet, tonight, right now. Mom, it's past 6, where? Mel's Diner on University Avenue. You know the one with the broken neon sign, 10 o'clock? That's 4 hours away. I need time to think, and you need time to pull yourself together. We're going to figure out who's behind this, and then we're going to make them pay. The phone went dead in my hands. Mel's Diner squatted between a pawn shop and a check-cashing place, its fluorescent lights flickering through grease-stained windows. I found Molly in the back corner booth, 2 cups of coffee growing cold between manila folders and printout pages. Sit down. We have work to do. I slid across the cracked vinyl seat. What's all this? Research. I've been thinking about that timeline you mentioned. Your father refuses to help on Sunday night. Wednesday afternoon, some mysterious company owns all your debt. That's not coincidence, Eric. That's strategy. She spread papers across the scratched table surface. Business registration forms, corporate filings, attorney listings, Meridian Asset Recovery, LLC. Formed March 16th. 3 days after Daniel hung up on you, my coffee tasted like burnt desperation. So someone with serious money moved very quickly to control your situation. Someone who knew exactly what you owed, who you owed it to, and how to buy it. But how would Dad know? Public records, honey, court filings, collection agency databases. If you know what you're looking for and have the right connections, financial information isn't that hard to find. She pointed to another document. Meridian's legal representation. Walsh, Henderson and Associates, downtown San Diego. Never heard of them. I have. They handle Daniel's commercial real estate deals in the newspapers. Same firm, Eric. Same lawyers who helped your father build his fortune are now destroying your life. The diner's jukebox wheezed out a country song about lost chances. 3 tables away, a tired waitress refilled coffee for a trucker who looked as desperate as I felt. What do we do? Molly's eyes had that calculating look I remembered from the divorce proceedings. Sharp, predatory. We use what we know. Daniel may have money now, but he's still the same man we walked away from 20 years ago. Same weaknesses, same need to be loved and accepted. Mom, I don't think he spent 2 decades building this fortune to prove something to us, to show us what we threw away. But deep down, he's still that abandoned man we left in the airport. She gathered the papers into neat stacks. We're going to remind him exactly what family means. And if that doesn't work, then we remind him what family can cost. We spent the next 6 hours researching everything we could find about Daniel's current life. His house in La Jolla, $3 million according to property records. His business partnerships. His charitable donations. The man who used to clip coupons now donated $50,000 annually to various causes. By dawn, Molly had assembled what she called our leverage portfolio. Here's what we know. He's successful, but he's alone. No wife, no social media presence, no evidence of close relationships. He built an empire, but he built it in isolation. She pulled out the final document. And here's our advantage. He still cares what people think about him. Look at these charity donations. Hospital wings, scholarship funds, community centers. That's not tax strategy, Eric. That's reputation management. I still don't understand how. Simple. We walk into his beautiful house and remind him that family isn't something you can buy or control. We tell him that if he doesn't resolve this debt situation immediately, we'll make sure everyone in San Diego knows exactly what kind of man Daniel Collins really is. My hands shook as I reached for my phone. Mom, it's almost 2 p.m. I have less than 24 hours. Then we better get moving. She stood up, leaving a $5 tip for coffee we'd barely touched. Get your car. We're driving to La Jolla. Right now? Right now, he wants to play power games? Fine. But he's about to learn that some games have consequences he never considered. Walking out of that diner felt like stepping off a cliff. But with 18 hours left before financial destruction, cliff jumping seemed like our only option. Molly climbed into my passenger seat with the confidence of someone who'd manipulated her way out of problems before. She had no idea what we were walking into. The drive through La Jolla felt like entering another world. Manicured lawns stretched behind tall hedges, and Mediterranean-style mansions perched on cliffs overlooking the Pacific. My Honda Civic wheezed up winding roads that seemed designed for vehicles far more expensive than mine. "Turn left at the next intersection," Molly directed, studying the address she'd written on a napkin. "Should be the third house on the right." When we found it, I had to pull over just to stare. The house rose from perfectly landscaped grounds like something from an architecture magazine. Glass and stone, clean modern lines, with a circular driveway that could park 6 cars. Floor-to-ceiling windows reflected the afternoon sun, and a fountain bubbled peacefully near the entrance. "This is what $3 million looks like," Molly whispered. "I'd imagine Dad living comfortably, but this was wealth on a scale I couldn't comprehend. The man who used to argue with cashiers over expired coupons now owned a house that belonged in Hollywood movies. Eric, focus. We stick to the plan. Family obligations, emotional appeals, public reputation threats if necessary." My legs felt unsteady as we walked up the stone pathway. Before we could ring the bell, the heavy wooden door opened. Daniel Collins stood in the doorway wearing a navy sweater that probably cost more than my monthly rent. 20 years had been kind to him. He looked healthy, confident, completely at ease. Molly.Eric. His voice carried no emotion whatsoever. "I've been expecting you." The foyer opened into a living room with cathedral ceilings and marble floors. Original artwork hung on the walls, and leather furniture was arranged around a fireplace that could heat my entire apartment. "Please, sit down." Molly perched on the edge of a chair that looked like it came from an Italian showroom. I sank into the opposite couch, feeling like I was contaminating it with my presence. "Daniel, we need to talk about this debt situation." "I assume you mean the Meridian asset recovery matter?" His calmness unnerved me. This wasn't the reaction we'd prepared for. "You know exactly what we mean," Molly continued. "The timing isn't coincidental. Eric calls you Sunday, you refuse to help, and by Wednesday some mysterious company owns all his debt. The timing is indeed significant." Daniel settled into his chair with the relaxed confidence of someone completely in control, though perhaps not in the way you imagine. "Dad, look, I don't care who owns the debt. I'm your son. I need help, and I need it now." "You needed help 20 years ago, too, in an airport terminal. Do you remember what happened then?" The words hit like cold water. "That was different." "Was it? You needed something from me. I couldn't provide it, and you walked away laughing." Molly leaned forward, switching to her concerned voice. "Daniel, we were young. We made mistakes. But this is about Eric's future now." "No, Molly, this is about consequences. Something you both seem to have forgotten exists." He stood and walked to a built-in bookshelf, returning with a manila folder. "Meridian Asset Recovery, LLC. Formed March 16th. Total investment in distressed debt acquisition, $87,200. Current value of acquired obligations, $323,000. My mouth went dry. You actually bought it?" "Every penny, through proper legal channels, full documentation, completely legitimate business transaction." "But why?" The question came out as barely a whisper. "Because 20 years ago, you taught me that family means nothing when it's inconvenient, that love disappears when money gets tight, that promises break when tested." He opened the folder and spread documents across the coffee table, legal papers, bank transfers, collection agency correspondence. "So I decided to test that theory. See what happens when family becomes very expensive indeed." Molly's composure finally cracked. "You vindictive monster. He's your son." "He was my son in 2005 too. Didn't stop him from abandoning me with 3 boarding passes and a broken heart. We were kids." Eric was 22, old enough to serve in the military, old enough to vote, old enough to understand that actions have consequences, just apparently not old enough to care about anyone but himself. I felt the room spinning slightly. "Dad, please, I have less than 10 hours. I know exactly how much time you have. I know because I control it." The silence stretched between us like a chasm. 20 years of separation, 20 years of unspoken pain, now laid bare in a living room worth more than most people's annual income. "What do you want?" Molly asked finally. Daniel smiled for the first time since we'd arrived. It wasn't a pleasant expression. "I want you to understand what you created in that airport terminal, and then I want you to choose." Daniel stood, straightening his sweater with the same calm precision he'd maintained throughout our confrontation. Let's move to my office for the formal terms. He led us down a hallway lined with framed business achievements, awards, newspaper clippings, photos of ribbon cuttings and charity events. 20 years of success documented like evidence in a court case. His office was intimidating in its professional perfection. Floor-to-ceiling law books, a mahogany desk that could seat 8 people for dinner, and leather chairs that probably cost more than my car. 2 manila folders sat precisely centered on the desk's polished surface. Daniel settled behind the desk, while Molly and I took the chairs facing him. The power dynamic was unmistakable. We were supplicants in his domain. Eric, you currently owe Meridian Asset Recovery $323,000, with payment due in... He glanced at his watch, 7 hours and 42 minutes. My stomach lurched. I'm offering you a choice. 2 options, both completely legal, both with clear consequences. He opened the first folder. Option A, public acknowledgement of your actions in 2005, along with a formal apology. What kind of acknowledgement? Molly's voice was barely a whisper. A written statement published in the San Diego Union Tribune within 48 hours. Additional posts on your social media accounts, Facebook, LinkedIn, whatever platforms you use. He slid a typed document across the desk. The language is specific. You'll acknowledge that you abandoned your father at Los Angeles International Airport as what you termed a cruel joke. You'll admit that your actions caused unjust suffering and state that the consequences you face today are directly earned through your choices. I stared at the paper. My hands shook too much to pick it up. What happens if we do this? The debt disappears completely. No collection activity, no credit reporting, no legal action. You walk away with a clean slate. And option B? Molly asked, though she sounded like she already knew. Daniel opened the second folder. Standard debt collection through the legal system. Lawsuit filed within 24 hours. Asset seizure where applicable, wage garnishment, credit reporting, public court records. But I don't have wages to garnish. Social Security benefits can be partially garnished for legitimate debts. Your mother's as well, if she provided any financial assistance. Molly went pale. You'd go after my benefits? I wouldn't. The legal system would, following standard collection procedures. He leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled. Eric, you have approximately 7 hours to decide. If you choose option A, the statement must be submitted to the newspaper and posted online before midnight Sunday. Miss that deadline, and option B proceeds automatically. This is blackmail, Molly said. No. Blackmail involves threatening to reveal secrets. This involves consequences for documented actions. Everything I'm requesting is factually accurate. I finally managed to pick up the apology statement. The words seemed to swim on the page. In June 2005, we abandoned Daniel Collins at Los Angeles International Airport, leaving him stranded with prepaid tickets to a family vacation. We did this as what we callously termed a cruel joke, laughing as we boarded our flight without him. Our actions were selfish, heartless, and inexcusable. The financial consequences we face today are directly earned through our choices. You want us to humiliate ourselves publicly. I want you to tell the truth publicly. The humiliation is your perception, not my intention. What about Eric's future? If this is in the newspapers, employers will see it. Employers can also see bankruptcy filings, court judgments, and collection lawsuits. Option A is significantly less damaging to long-term prospects. The office fell silent except for the ticking of an antique clock on the bookshelf. 7 hours. 7 hours to choose between public shame and financial destruction. Mom? My voice cracked. I can't survive bankruptcy. The stress alone will finish what the debt collectors started. She looked at the document again, her lips moving silently as she read. When she finished, she set it down with the careful precision of someone handling explosives. If we agree to this, you'll really forgive the entire debt? The moment your social media posts go live and the newspaper confirms publication, all collection activity stops permanently. And if we refuse, then you'll discover exactly how efficient the legal system can be when someone has the resources to use it properly. Molly closed her eyes. How long do we have to decide? Daniel checked his watch again. 7 hours and 38 minutes. My debit card was declined at the gas station Friday morning. Try it again, I told the attendant, though my hands were already shaking. Sir, the machine says insufficient funds and account restricted. Do you have another form of payment? I checked my phone. 3 missed calls from First National Bank, 2 from my credit card company, and a notification that my automatic rent payment had been rejected. 24 hours. It had taken exactly 24 hours for Daniel's legal machine to begin dismantling my life. The certified mail was waiting when I got home. 3 thick envelopes marked legal notice in red letters. I tore them open with trembling fingers. Collins v. Collins, San Diego. Superior Court Asset Seizure Order. Case Javrasi v. 2025-8847 Notice of Garnishment. Meridian Asset Recovery, LLC. The language was dense, professional, terrifying. Court dates, response deadlines, asset inventories. They wanted everything. Bank accounts, personal property, future earnings. My phone rang. Molly, Eric, they froze my accounts too. Social Security, savings, everything. How is that legal? Apparently I co-signed something years ago. A car loan maybe? The lawyer I called said they can garnish Social Security for legitimate debts. I laughed, but it came out like a sob. You called a lawyer? $5,000 retainer for a consultation. The next wave hit Sunday. Eviction notices. Mine arrived with the sheriff's deputy at 7 a.m., official and final. Molly's came an hour later. 30 days, she said when she called. 30 days to vacate premises or face forcible removal. Where are we supposed to go? I don't know, honey. I honestly don't know. By Monday, the desperation had turned systematic. Molly arrived at my apartment with a legal pad covered in phone numbers and a plan that felt like clutching at smoke. We'll call everyone. Old friends, distant relatives, anyone who might help. The conversations followed the same pattern. Initial sympathy, growing discomfort, polite excuses. I wish I could help, but this sounds complicated. Maybe you should. Have you tried calling? Nobody wanted to touch a legal mess involving hundreds of thousands of dollars and a man with the resources to pursue collections systematically. The motel room cost $47 a night. The Sunset Inn, on a stretch of highway where palm trees grew through cracked asphalt, and the neon sign buzzed with electrical problems. Molly sat on one of the twin beds, surrounded by legal papers we couldn't afford to fight, and bills we couldn't afford to pay. He planned this perfectly, she said finally. What do you mean? The timing, the multiple lawsuits, the account freezes. Even if we found a lawyer, we'd be fighting on 6 different fronts. Bankruptcy court, eviction court, garnishment hearings, asset seizure. I stared at the water stain on the ceiling. You think he wanted us to refuse the apology? I think he knew we would. Pride, stubbornness, whatever you want to call it. He knew we'd rather fight than admit we were wrong. And now? Now we're homeless, broke, and facing years of legal battles we can't win. The silent stretch between us, filled only by the hum of the air conditioning unit and traffic noise from the highway. Mom. Yeah? Should we try calling him? She was quiet for a long moment. What would we say? That we were wrong, that we're sorry, that we'll do whatever he wants. You think he'd listen? I pulled out my phone and stared at the screen. Daniel's number was still in my contacts from that first desperate call 6 days ago. 6 days. A week ago, I'd been unemployed but housed, broke but functioning. Now I was living in a motel room with my elderly mother, watching our lives disappear into the legal system like water down a drain. I don't know, I said finally. But what else do we have left to try? The San Diego Union Tribune conference room smelled like fresh coffee and nervous sweat. Television cameras lined the back wall while reporters checked their recording devices. At exactly 2:30, Eric and Molly took their seats at the polished table, official documents spread before them. I sat off to the side, watching 20 years of pain reach their conclusion. Eric cleared his throat. His voice shook slightly as he began reading. My name is Eric Collins. 20 years ago, my mother and I abandoned my father, Daniel Collins, at Los Angeles International Airport. We told him to find his own way home and laughed as we left him stranded with prepaid vacation tickets. The cameras recorded every word. This was a cruel and thoughtless act that caused unjust suffering to a man who had worked multiple jobs to provide for our family. Our actions contributed to the end of our family relationships and left Daniel alone and humiliated through our choices. Molly leaned forward to the microphone. I was 46 years old enough to understand the impact of what we were doing. I led my son in this terrible decision, choosing cruelty over communication in our marriage. The consequences we face today, Eric continued, are directly related to our behavior. Daniel's success despite our treatment shows his true character. We publicly acknowledge our wrongdoing and its lasting effects. A reporter raised her hand. Mr. Collins, how did this abandonment affect your father's life? Eric glanced at me before answering. He lost everything: his family, his sense of security, his faith in the people who were supposed to love him. But instead of becoming bitter, he built something remarkable. Can you elaborate? He transformed pain into purpose. Every property he purchased, every business success, every charitable donation, it all grew from the determination he found after we left him behind. Another reporter addressed Molly. Mrs. Collins, what do you want people to understand about this situation? That actions have consequences, even 20 years later. Daniel achieved justice without revenge. He could have destroyed us completely, but instead, he's giving us a chance we don't deserve. The questions continued for 30 minutes. Each answer revealed another layer of the truth they'd hidden for 2 decades. Finally, I stepped forward to the microphone. 20 years ago, I thought my life was ending. I stood in that airport terminal feeling worthless, abandoned, forgotten. But that moment taught me something precious. The only person who controls your response to adversity is you. I looked directly at the cameras. I didn't pursue this for revenge. I pursued it for justice. There's a difference. Revenge seeks to harm. Justice seeks to balance. Today balances the scales. What happens now? A journalist asked. Now Eric and Molly have the opportunity to rebuild their lives with honesty instead of manipulation. The legal actions against them end today. Their debt is forgiven. Their chance at redemption begins. The room fell quiet except for the whir of camera motors. Family isn't just blood, I continued. It's earned through loyalty, support, and respect. Today we all learned that lesson. An hour later, I sat alone in my car in the newspaper's parking garage. The silence felt different now. Not empty, but full, complete. My phone buzzed with messages from reporters, business associates, friends who'd seen the news coverage. I turned it off and started the engine. The drive back to La Jolla took me along the coast highway, ocean stretching endlessly to the horizon. 20 years ago, I'd taken this same route from the airport, broken and humiliated. Today, I traveled it as a man who'd proven that dignity survives abandonment, that success follows determination, and that justice, patiently pursued, always finds its mark. At home, I poured myself a scotch and stood at my study window. The harbor lights twinkled like promises in the gathering dusk. The abandoned man from LAX was finally, truly at peace. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.